Okay, so
Hey,
Friday off screen.
welcome to Friday Off Screen with Deepa and Jijo.
Yes. So why Friday off screens quickly is because of late, I'm talking about myself. I've been spending a lot of time watching Netflix or whatever,
And
and
chilling.
not chilling,
Not chilling.
not chilling. So I thought maybe I would utilize my time a little more on the
Off screen.
off-screen part.
Yeah.
Hence Friday off-screen.
Beautiful.
We might do it on Saturday as well, but still Friday is catchy. So Friday off-screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to discuss today about interesting things. So I've been to Van Gogh, as you know, Van Gogh Museum, and more than the art forms of Van Gogh, which are obviously his paintings and all, what I could connect was his personality and about the artist.
Right.
Okay, so while art and all, I'm not a specialist who can really comment about his technology of art or his skill about art. I'm zero, right? He might be at 1,000. So while I liked his sunflower drawing and so on, but I wanted to know about his thought process and the way what made him paint that, what made him paint into those themes and all. So when I tried to look at him as an artist, that was interesting part for me. And then I came home and of course I read a bit more about Van Gogh, and then I wanted to just think, hey, what about Leonardo?
Okay.
Right. And then when I started reading about Leonardo, I really felt that hey, he's a man. I mean, we have to talk about, or we have
So
to.
this
read.
is Leonardo da Vinci.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So actually, he's Leonardo da Vinci.
Okay.
So da Vinci, it's very important. The is of. Vinci is a town or a village in Florence, Italy.
Right.
So he was born in the village. So and he was an illegitimate son to his parents. So he didn't carry a last name.
Surname,
Yeah. So his father's name. So he's just Leonardo
Okay.
from Vinci.
Okay.
Or of Vinci.
Awesome.
Okay. So what intrigued me when I read about you, of course, we discussed this this week as well. He had interest for wide array of subjects.
Yeah.
You know, and he mastered in many of them too.
Right.
Although everything is not publicly well known, but he had written like about 13,000 pages of drawings, notes, and so on.
Yeah.
And even Bill Gates owns some 36 pages of one of his drawings and one of his copies.
I think similar to Michelangelo as well. A lot. His diary is through which we know about him as the inventor and all of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So Leonardo, I just want to talk about him for a couple of minutes. Very interesting guy. So he was born in 1452, lived for 67 years.
Okay.
So 1452. So that means his work when he was about 20 years. His work is part of High Renaissance.
Okay.
Okay. So like Michelangelo was his contemporary at that point of time. So this artist is from the High Renaissance period of Italy. Okay. Now about Leonardo, I mean, where to start? If you call him an artist, it's an understatement.
Okay.
You just can't tag him as an artist because I think he's a wizard. I don't know what word I should use, but I think he's a wizard. So he's a mathematician. Okay, he's an astronomer. He's a botanist. He's an anatomist. Then he's an engineer. He's an architect. And these are all proven facts. It's not like assumed. So I mean, many more. He loved everything under the sun. So
I mean, I think he is. I mean, I think in common parlance, I think he's more famous as an artist, right? So when we talk about Leonardo, I think the first thing that comes to our mind is
The Mona Lisa. Yes,
right?
yes.
Mona Lisa,
Last Supper.
yeah. All of that. And I think just a few days back we were seeing that documentary on
Salvador
Mundi, the Lost Leonardo.
Yeah.
So it's mostly as an artist that he's famous.
Yeah.
But then, like some of his contemporaries, like Michelangelo, he's been a man with multiple interests and multiple talents.
For sure. So I mean, he sculpted, he had dissected more than 30 bodies, human bodies, not just human bodies but also animals. So luckily his father and grandfather were helpful.
Right.
They identified that he was talented and they nurtured his talent.
Yeah.
So there was less oppression.
Yeah.
And some quick facts was, it's assumed that he's a vegetarian.
Oh, wow.
He liked simple diet. And then he was assumed to be gay, although there were no strong evidences.
Okay.
But he was assumed to be gay as well.
Let's not comment on a sexual preference.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
That also is a state of mind about his works and so on. So I'm just trying to link to that. Yeah. So why are we talking about Leonardo, right? Because
I mean, all these facts, you just do a Google search on Leonardo, and you can find
just
all of
wiki
these
him and
facts.
you'll get
But then the interesting question is, so what's the what fascinates us about Leonardo, right? What is that one thing that amongst multiple things that we feel we can take up for discussion today? Yeah.
So he didn't go to a proper school,
Right.
where he was taught about each of these subjects, like how, for example, we were taught social, science, mathematics, so on. All these he excelled almost, I can say. He excelled in all these subjects because he was inquisitive. He had that curiosity in him, and every week he used to write questions for which, like a list of questions for this week, and also trying to pursue answers to those questions.
Interesting.
So
he was a person who had multiple interests, so which means that his focus would waver from one to another, right?
Yes.
And typically for people who have that kind of wavering focus, you don't tend to let's say go into completion, or or for example, you would have the tendency to leave something in between, and then, hey, this really interests me, let me jump to that. So do we see that in his work as well?
Yes. Many of his commissioned works, he could not finish them.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So they were unleft. He wavered too much.
Right.
He juggled between multiple subjects.
Yeah.
So there could be other reasons as well. But yes, focusing on one thing was definitely not his forte. Yeah. So he wavered a lot. Yes. Yeah.
That's very interesting, because I think when you look at personality types as well, people who are open to a lot of experience, who are creative, they tend to waver.
Yes.
And they need not be very,
you can't contain them.
Structured.
They're all over. They want to do everything.
Exactly.
Yeah. So he was not in a box. So my point of view,
and I think it's about the context, right? So it's not a very bad thing that you have a lot of interests and you waver from one to another, and sometimes you are not structured as someone else who is slightly less creative in that sense.
Absolutely.
But I think it's all about the context.
It's all about the context.
So if you're in a banking job and if you try to do that, probably that won't work.
Absolutely.
But let's say if you're in a creative field, maybe advertising or creative writing and things to that, and you can kind of probably take those creative liberties.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
So if your prime motto is just to earn money or to finish 9 to 5, then your focus should be to finishing that particular job in that particular timeline. But his father was wealthy. It appeared that he didn't have many constraints, and he did commission certain art which kept him going, and he was also a celebrity then in Florence and Milan and so on. So I think beyond a certain point, he didn't pursue money, but he pursued excellence or knowledge, actually. So my takeaway from his life, he's very inspiring, is to be curious.
Brilliant. Yeah.
To be curious. To be curious. Like we have million things now as compared to some 100 years, 500 years back, right? There were less things, so there could be less questions. but we have many more things like man-made things, natural things, so many things. We travel, so we have lot of questions. We should have more questions now to think about and also to get an answer. Like when I sit in a flight, they ask me to put it in airplane mode. I mean, why am I putting it in airplane mode? Either ask someone or get that answered. Or for example, I mean, why do they dimmer the lights? So I mean, these we might be knowing quite
Question
straightforward,
everything.
but question everything. Be curious about everything. Otherwise, it's not like, okay, in my job I need to be curious so that I excel at my job. But in general, in life, I mean, seriously, why did my father do it that way? Why am I doing it this way? For example, so why are there only 7 subjects in schools? Why are there not 20 subjects, or why are there not 3 subjects right from your childhood? So everything, I mean, question everything, be curious. We may not become Leonardos, but we will definitely get more enlightenment in our life. And maybe if we explore more paths, maybe we become maybe we get into other paths as well. We might have a hidden talent where we can really pursue that.
I mean, I think when I look at it, there are 2 aspects to it. One is that innate curiosity that you have in your mind, right? So for example, I might read about something, I might see something, and then I could become extremely curious about it. So that is one part of it, the curiosity that you have in your mind. The second aspect is, I think, taking initiative and taking agency to kind of work on that curiosity, right? So for example, let's take the example of photography, right? You might see people taking amazing photographs, and you might be supremely interested in photography. You read every book there is on it, you watch YouTube videos, you listen to people, all of that, and you absolutely read everything upon photography. But you don't take the next step of buying a camera and going out and actually shooting, right? So I think all of us, I mean, a lot of us can fall in either of these 2 camps, or in both. I don't know what is right or wrong, but then but obviously having that curious mind and curiosity is the first step towards it, and the second step is taking your curiosity into action.
Absolutely. So while there can be constraints that I can do this, I cannot do this, but again, those constraints should be negotiable. I mean, you can't just keep your boundaries so tight.
Absolutely.
Then everybody had constraints. Even then, back 500 years back, there were constraints. There were more constraints. They had less information available.
Exactly. And I think that is where I think the context and the constraints, I mean, I would use the term context becomes very important.
True.
It could be our social context, it could be our economic context, it could
Family
be our
context, to be as
personal
local
context, for example. It could be our cultural context. In some countries it's more acceptable to try out things. In some countries it's acceptable to follow a certain norm, become an engineer, become a doctor, become a lawyer, for example. So the context is very important. But then I think as you said, if you just depend on the context, you won't be able to push the boundaries, right? So you need to be aware of the context, but at the same time be aware of your interest and try to push it.
I mean, even understand your interest. First step is because interest won't come to you. You should explore all horizons, so that suddenly you might find, I never thought that fishing was my interest. Suddenly I might be interested in that. So be curious.
And I think when you do that, at times we fall into this expert trap. So for example, probably because of some of the context that we have in our country as well, let's say when you do something, you have to be an expert in it. Right?
The pressure of
of being an expert, so you kind of
Mm-hmm.
fall into that expert trap, that I won't do it unless I can excel in it, or unless I can be really good in it, right? But that is not necessary. I think that kind of becomes a huge roadblock for you to try new things, because you're kind of scared that what if I am not good at it, what if I try that out and then I'm not really good at it, and I remember, for example, you trying out painting, right? Because you really wanted to do that, and when you put it out, some people commented that this looks very amateurish, why are you putting it out, right? But then you were bold enough because you just wanted to explore it, right? And then there's always this theory of 10,000 hours of practice. That, for example, let's say you wanted to do painting, you started it off, you're very amateurish, but you spend 10,000 hours of practice, right? I mean,
You might reach a place where
you might reach a place where,
acceptable.
it is of acceptable
again,
quality.
Let's remove this acceptance thing at all from the entire equation. Yeah. So my rounded.
So the thing is, don't fall into that expert trap. So that's one takeaway for me as well when you look at exploring your different interests.
Yes. Yeah. So Leonardo.
Yeah. I mean, we started with Leonardo. We talked about different things, and I think one more thing that we talked about, and which I just wanted to bring in, was the importance of mindsets.
Yes.
We did talk about the expert mindset, the expert trap, but then the other thing I was just thinking about was the traveler's mindset.
Wow.
So basically the traveler's mindset is all of us travel, all of us have traveled, but you would notice when you just reflect on your last travel, for example, when you go to a new country, you tend to be more receptive to new experiences. New people, new smells, new food, new architecture, new geography, right? The way even, people drive on the road, the way people cross the road, we automatically tend to be more receptive. Our senses tend to be more...
Yes, I'm more open when I travel.
More open, exactly. Right?
I can eat different dishes, I can try different things.
Absolutely.
But while I'm at home, I may not even think of doing that.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
is it about being open, the travel?
Yeah, absolutely. So the same person, when they go to a different country, they are more open about new things. They remember... those experiences, while when you come back, when you get off a flight, when you get off a train, you come back to your routine, you tend to be more closed in mindset,
nice.
And you go into your daily routine, and you tend to be closed to things that are happening around you, right? So the traveler mindset is a very interesting way of kind of an analogy to the fact that the same person, just with a difference in mindset, can be open to different experiences.
Wow,
right?
I like that.
So the idea is bring that traveler mindset to work. Bring that traveler mindset to your day-to-day life.
Right.
See what is changing around you. See
it's so
how
much relevant. Yeah, I can understand
exactly.
because I can put it in the current context what we are discussing.
Right.
Because being open is also a natural extension of being curious.
Right.
Both of them are so closely linked.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So I would really want to be curious. Stay curious. Be open. That traveler's mindset. Keep that mindset.
And
always
don't be afraid to fail. Be open to
like Leonardo, most of his works he didn't publish.
Absolutely.
We don't know the reason. I mean, maybe the prevailing conditions then, he was too much ahead of his time. Okay, I mean, even a telescope, he has even designed a telescope to the extent of magnifying moon, to the extent of even measuring the thickness of the glass, for which he could magnify the moon and see. So where Galileo, it happened only after roughly about 100 years later. So he was so much ahead of his time. So I really feel that there were many other factors for which he didn't publish, or maybe his personality, that it was his more notes, but he had really had prolific notes and drawings and so many things.
And the other, I mean, can we continue this discussion?
Yeah, it's fine.
And the other thing I feel is that, I'm sure you can bring in this Leonardo example as well. How your knowledge in one area helps you, in your work in another area.
Oh, tell me about it.
Right?
I really,
so
really like
completely unrelated areas.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
We might think that, okay, I'm, let's say, an engineer or I'm a lawyer, so let me just focus in this particular area of interest. But it could be a completely different interest that you have, maybe driving or, adventure sport or, cooking, for example. And perspectives from there, could influence your performance in a completely different area, right? I mean, maybe you
like also, I'm going back to Leonardo because he's so much, so much over him actually. So he used to observe birds. He was fascinated and he used to observe birds. And he had this strong conviction that he could there's some or the other way that human beings can fly. you know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he even designed a sort of parachute. So it's all like it happened because he observed nature. He was extremely observant. That didn't happen because he went to a school which taught him how to make machines, or it didn't come from a need that, you know, hey, now you have to give me something to fly. So it just happened naturally, as you said, you know, working or learning one aspect could actually teach you doing something else.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
I think the same thing
absolutely.
with his interest for anatomy
Yeah, yeah,
and how, you know, that was converted into the detailing of his painting.
right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Amazing.
All right.
So, cheers to that.
Cheers. Yeah, cheers to Leonardo.
And cheers to, you know, some
his
time off
curiosity.
screen and, you know,
Oh, yeah,
discussing
Friday
about
off
this.
screens. Yeah, let's do this
And,
more.
you know, kind of finding some
Yeah.
connections between what we read and, you know, what we experience.
Yeah. All right. So
Okay.
stay curious.
Yeah, stay
and
curious,
wear or have traveler's mindset.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.